All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today to chat with all of you about sharks. My name is Jillian Morris, and I'm a marine biologist, shark conservationist, videographer, photographer, pretty much a lot of things that really allow me to spend as much time in the water with sharks as possible. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to share some photos and videos with you. The program is trying to load, but in the meantime, I'll just talk a little bit about what I do, and then maybe we can do some questions if you guys have them. So I've loved the ocean my whole life. I grew up in Maine, so I spent a lot of time in tide pools when I was a kid, checking out anything from little snails and crabs to small fish, and I was just in love with the ocean. I was amazed by it. And I actually got to see my first shark when I was 8 years old. I was snorkeling in Florida, and it was a nurse shark, so I will always love nurse sharks. They're one of my favorites. And it was such a cool animal, and it didn't try and attack me. It wasn't aggressive. And so my first kind of interaction with sharks was very different than what a lot of people hear or think or see when we talk about sharks. And from that, I kept studying, reading books, and learning as much as I could about all ocean animals. And it just kind of continued as a lifelong journey. I went to school. I actually studied animal behavior because I was really interested in why animals do the things they do, and what are the similarities between our own behaviors. Because people are always kind of surprised when I talk about sharks are social. Some of them have friends, and that's not something you would think of when you think of sharks. So along the way, after studying them at school, I did a lot of internships and volunteering to gain experience, and then I worked as a research assistant in Australia studying tiger sharks and their impact on the behavior of turtles there. Then I spent some time in the Bahamas, California. Was traveling a lot, doing a lot of photo and video as well. So that's kind of my background, is a strong science background, but also photo and video, because I always had a camera with me, and I was going to pretty remote places that a lot of people didn't have access to. So I was able to share a story and realize that people are intrigued, they're afraid of the ocean, and an image to say, look at this cool thing that I saw, or look at this behavior, was really an amazing tool for teaching people. So that's kind of how I actually started Sharks for Kids. Have a lot of media, a lot of photos and videos I've collected, and teamed up with my husband and one of my best friends who had at the time had just finished doing his PhD in shark research. And we created curriculum and just materials for kids to have access to some really cool things about sharks, to get excited, to understand that there's so much more to these animals than just teeth. That's what we think of when we think of sharks, the teeth and the fins and man-eating monsters. I'm sure you guys have heard that before. Sharks are not man-eating monsters. Okay? We're not on the menu. They do not actively hunt humans. We've actually done experiments in the Bahamas where I live where we put human blood in the water with sharks, and it doesn't cause a frenzy. Most of the time they just swim away from it. It's not something that is attracts the sharks. It doesn't smell like food. So when you hear people say, oh my gosh, if you put yourself in the water, the sharks are going to come in, it's not true. Unfortunately, we hear a lot of things, we see a lot of things on television, the internet, movies about sharks, and a lot of them are very negative. And so hopefully, like today, if you guys have some questions and want to talk a little bit more about them, you'll realize that the things that you see in those places, you have an opportunity to kind of be a great scientist and ask questions and say, wow, this article said rogue shark hunting the beaches. They don't do that. If they were hunting the beaches, it's because the fish or the seals or the sea lions that they eat are moving into shore, right? A lot of the things that we do as humans are impacting the climate, the environment, the habitats these animals live in, plastic pollution, all these things. So they're having to change. They're having to adjust much faster than a normal kind of time frame would allow for, because we're just inundating the ocean with all of these challenges and these problems. So if their food is moving at a different time or migrating or moving to different areas to find its own food, that's going to impact these animals. And we do go on the beach, we do go in the water, who are very lucky to be able to do that. Right? You'd have a hard time going out and just walking through a pride of lions, right? You might be all right, but it's much easier for us to actually get in the water with a school of sharks or a shiver of sharks. So these animals are actually really remarkable, and having spent thousands of hours in the water with them, studying them, catching and tagging them, photographing and filming them, has allowed me to learn a lot. And one of the things is that our ideas about sharks that are put out there in the media really aren't the truth about these animals. They're intelligent, they're social, and there's so much more to them. They're not just swimming around eating everything in the ocean. Right? So my time working with them has really kind of helped me learn that and see that, and now in turn try to share it with other people. Because unfortunately, about 1/4, 25% of all sharks and rays and skates, so rays and skates are a flattened version of a shark, they're all elasmobranchs, they're all cartilaginous fishes, are threatened with extinction due to pollution, plastic, overfishing. They're targeted for their fins primarily, which are used to make a soup, which can be very expensive. Not only served in Asian cultures, sometimes people say that. You can find it in the US, in Europe, in Canada. It's something that's happening in our own backyards. The oil from their liver is used to make lipstick, oils, pills. You can go to GNC or Target. Oh, great questions. All right, so there are certain sharks that their home range or the area that they were once found has been reduced, particularly something like angel sharks. Their range has been reduced extreme amounts, as well as the small-toothed sawfish. Over the years, because of hunting, they were targeted for their saw and also caught in nets because of all those teeth on the outside. So yes, you will see these animals not necessarily become completely extinct from a region, but definitely impacted and having their natural range be reduced and reduced and reduced over time to such a small area that something like a small-toothed sawfish is listed as critically endangered. All right, and another question from Sunnyville E. How do sharks hunt? Well, sharks have extremely strong senses. They have the same 5 senses we do. Believe it or not, they have ears, but they're entirely inside the shark's head, kind of on the back of the head, 2 little dots. They don't have the outside part, so they can hear. But they also have some extrasensory systems, one referred to as their sixth sense. It looks like the shark has freckles or hasn't shaved in a few days. These are the ampullae of Lorenzini. They're gel-filled, and they kind of create this film over the shark's snout. And they're electroreceptors, meaning they can detect electrical pulses, things like heartbeats. So if a stingray is buried in the sand, the shark can move over that, and it can actually feel the heartbeat, even if it can't see or smell the animal. So their sense of smell is incredibly strong. Their nostrils are only used for smell. They do not breathe through their nose. They also have a lateral line, which are these kind of sensory cells down the side of the body that can detect pressure changes and movement. Imagine if you guys turned a fan on in your classroom. Even if your eyes were closed, you could feel the air moving and figure out where it was. So all of these senses are extremely strong. And they'll use the nostrils going back and forth, kind of swimming. If you've seen the S-shaped pattern, it's because they're getting the direction. Just like we can hear left or right, they can use their nostrils to smell. And they'll move towards that. And, they might hear an injured fish, they smell it, they see it, they can feel the movement, and kind of as they go in is really when they use those electrosensors to kind of figure out it's there. They can pick up very small traces, but they have to be close. Like the most kind of accepted sort of description of the scent capabilities is like a tablespoon of blood in an Olympic-sized pool. Now, obviously, if there's a lot more blood, they can smell it from a further distance. It's not hundreds of miles. You think about it, the size of the smell or the object, the bigger it is, the greater the distance it can cover and spread. Sound travels faster in water, and sharks also actually have, a sense of smell that's about quite a bit stronger than humans. Same thing for hearing everything. Their sensory systems are designed really for being in this underwater world. The electrical signals would be things like heartbeats that they're picking up, but also cameras. boat engines, things that humans put in the water that sharks will come up. Sometimes you see them biting. They're trying to figure out what it is. Do sharks have bones? They do not. If you guys bend your ear, we all have cartilage. A shark's entire skeleton is made of cartilage. They do not have a bone in their body. So they're very flexible. It's lighter than bone as well. So it's part of the reason they don't sink to the bottom of the ocean. Sharks have been around for about 450 million years. Obviously, the ones we had back then are no longer around, but they've been around. And they've developed all these amazing adaptations to survive in their underwater world and be very good ocean predators. Well, people are always afraid of things we don't know. I actually just read a book from the 1800s and talking about the size of the ocean. You think about it, the ocean was so vast. There weren't airplanes to take people as quickly or large vessels, and crossing an ocean was weeks and months of time. So it was just this vast, vast unknown. And there's still so much about the ocean we don't know. So things that are unknown are scary. And sharks, unfortunately, like crocodiles and snakes, are something that humans have died from. So it kind of goes into that monster mentality. I think Jaws played a large part of that. It was the first real kind of widespread media that had a negative view of sharks, that was really out there for everybody. And people were afraid to go in swimming pools, even if they knew that there weren't sharks there. And people are still afraid of the ocean and sharks because of that movie. So I think a lot of the negative media, still to this day, newspaper articles, rogue shark, killer shark. I've seen articles about like divers that are going in the water to take photographs, and it's like diver survives encounter with killer shark. That's not the mentality that these people have. We're going in the water because we want to. We want to be with these animals. We want to share their story. But unfortunately, there's still that fear. If you guys think about it, you go to scary movies or haunted houses. We like to be afraid as well. So I like to be scared. So kind of sharks really fall into that. And they have the teeth, and the ocean's a big place and underwater, and it can be dark and we don't know what's there. So there's all these components that really lead into kind of this fear and keeping it going. We have heard two different stories about the remora fish. So it is a symbiotic relationship. So what the remoras do is they will attach themselves to the shark. They get a free ride. They get all the crumbs because sharks are messy eaters, but they'll also clean the skin of the shark. So they're kind of cleaning off parasites and bacteria because they're eating them. So the remora benefits a lot more than the shark, but in some cases the shark benefits a little bit from the remora actually eating like parasites and things off the skin. Great questions. Do you guys have any other questions? Or I'm just looking back to see if I missed any. All right, so I think the media thing is really important. Where's your favorite place to study sharks? I'm really lucky. The Bahamas, where I live, is called the shark diving capital of the world, and I do live there because of sharks. There's a great research center called the Bimini Shark Lab. There's also other places, the Cable Luthra Institute, where a lot of really phenomenal shark science is being done. Divers from all over the world travel there. It's on Shark Week every year, and so we've worked on multiple Shark Week projects featuring the island and the work that's being done there. So we also have a lot of different sharks. Right now it's great hammerhead season. So in the colder months, the hammerheads migrate. This is an endangered species. There's nowhere else in the world that you can see these animals in this kind of shallow, clear water as close to shore. So it's really, really special. And have up to 9 to 10 different great hammerheads on a dive, which is just remarkable. It's incredible. They're very big sharks, some of them 12, 13, 14 feet long. They're very wide, and being in the water with an endangered species is really, really special. So working with them is amazing. We also have tiger sharks, bull sharks, Caribbean reef sharks, nurse sharks, one of my favorites, silkies, black nose, black tip, sharp nose. The other day we were out with the Shark Lab and we got to see a night shark, which is a deep water shark, as well as a dusky smoothhound, which is another deep water shark. So if you want to spend time with these animals, it's a really, really great place to be. You can go out every single day and see sharks. So it is absolutely my favorite place to study sharks. And I'm really lucky because I live there. So a little bit about the media. One of the things that you can all do is when you see these things like, Sharknado 4, 5, 6, whatever one we're at, you can realize that's a bit crazy. But some of these other things, like, Shark Week had a thing called Megalodon. Megalodon does not exist anymore. It's been extinct for about 2.7 million years. It was a very real shark, but there are things out there that unfortunately seem like they could be true, that maybe there's some science involved, but you really can ask these questions and remember they're not these monsters. They're not targeting and calculating and looking for humans. Honestly, if sharks wanted to eat us, they would and they could. We wouldn't be able to go in the water at all. And millions of people go in the ocean every single day with no issues, right? If you've been in the ocean before, you might have been, probably, hopefully, you've been with a shark, but it didn't bother you. You probably didn't even see it, but it saw you. It knew you were there. And a really scary thing is an ocean without sharks. So it's not just that I love them. If you think about the food chain, okay, sharks are an apex predator in a lot of cases, and they're always carnivores. They eat other animals, which helps keep the system balanced. And when you remove all the sharks from an area, I was diving in Indonesia in an area that had been heavily overfished. There are no sharks, very few fish, and the corals are dying. So these animals really keep our oceans healthy, which no matter where we live is important for us. So some of the air you guys breathe today came from oxygen. It has oxygen from the ocean. Water we drink, food we eat, the products we buy. We're connected to the water every single day, even if we don't live anywhere near the ocean. So it's not just that I love sharks and I want you to all love sharks. It's really that these animals are extremely important, and unfortunately, they're in a lot of trouble. 100 million sharks are killed every year by humans. 100 million. Okay, that is a huge, scary number. And it's twice as fast as their populations can recover from. So their populations are going down. They don't have lots of babies. Sharks grow very slowly. They mature at a late age. Great whites have to be anywhere from, I think, 25 to 34 to be able to reproduce. Other sharks anywhere from kind of 8 to 18 years. And then they have very few offspring. Port Jackson sharks only lay one egg case. Right? So these animals are not having hundreds of thousands of babies. They don't spawn like fish do. So because of these life history characteristics, the slow growth, late maturing, and very few offspring, they're extremely vulnerable to overfishing. And unfortunately, this is something that is happening and is impacting our oceans. But things like learning about them, sharing this information, projects at school, videos, going home and telling mom and dad, guess what? 100 million sharks are being killed every year. Right? These are things that you guys can all do to kind of help these animals, and it really does make a difference no matter where we live, because the more people that understand they're not monsters, they're not man-eaters, and they're actually really important, the more people might want to help them. The biggest threat to sharks is definitely human impact. Finning is probably the reason most are killed now. The demand for these fins, the soup is very expensive, and the fins sell for a very high price. It's unfortunate because consuming shark, there's a lot of toxins. There's also mercury in animals. Higher up the food chain, more mercury. People can get mercury poisoning. So there's some health issues with consuming sharks. It's best to avoid it if you can. And the soup doesn't have any flavor from the fins. They use other things to flavor it. That's probably the largest push for sharks, but they're also being targeted for their jaws, their meat, their oil from their liver, and they're caught as bycatch. So people are going out fishing for tuna or swordfish, and they're catching sharks. But on these long lines, the sharks are dead already. So they're already caught, they're already dead, so there's no releasing them. But humans are definitely the biggest threat. Habitat destruction. Where I live in the Bahamas, a lot of the mangroves have been cut down, and that's a nursery area for baby lemon sharks. So now their nursery habitats being reduced, so it's less of a space for them, so it's impacting the population. So really, there's a lot of things happening to sharks. It's not just finning, but that's one of the largest, although consumption of shark meat is on the rise. So more and more people are starting to eat it, which is also causing issues globally for different species. Do you guys have any other questions about Sharks are working with them. Let's see, someone's typing one in. What topic about sharks is the most interesting to me? I think sharks are really fascinating because we learn new stuff every single day, every single year. New species of sharks are discovered. Just last week, the bonnethead, which is a small hammerhead, is possibly 2 species instead of just 1. Last year, the Greenland shark, it was discovered that we knew they lived a long time, but scientists proved that they can live at least 272 years. That's amazing. That makes them the longest living vertebrate animal alive today. Deep sea sharks. So I think just the fact that we're learning so many new things about them all the time, that's really interesting. But I do like looking at the behaviors. I think the social aspect, because it's for most people, they wouldn't think that sharks have friends, and the Bimini Shark Lab has done a lot of work looking at that social behavior, and the little lemons have best friends and buddies they hang out with. So I think that's really, really interesting. Anything that kind of helps us to connect and see something common, so that, because sharks aren't necessarily cute and cuddly, or most people wouldn't think they are. I love them, but a lot of people wouldn't think that. So they might not get the attention, but if you say, oh, did you know they have friends? That's something that people can go, oh, that's really cool, or they can understand or connect with. And so I think it draws more people in, and more people interested in sharks are maybe wanting to help them because it's allowing them to see a different side of these animals. Sharks are good parents in that they carry their young to a point where the animal can be completely on its own. Mom and dad sharks do not take care of the babies at all, whether they're born alive with an umbilical cord, meaning they have a little belly button like lemon sharks, or an egg case. Things like a Port Jackson shark will leave an egg case and she leaves. She's done. She doesn't sit on the nest. Or things like nurse sharks, which actually have the babies that have egg cases inside the mother. They hatch out and they're born alive. But when these animals come out, they're fully functioning. They have all the same sensory systems. They can hunt, they can find food. They'll sometimes have different markings to help them camouflage. So they're actually completely capable of taking care of themselves. They're still vulnerable because they're small, but the mother has put a lot of energy and nutrients and time invested into getting them to that point. Something like a lemon shark, she's carried them for 11 months, right? Frilled shark, 3.5 years is the gestation period, the pregnancy time. So the mothers have really invested a lot of time into getting these babies as well prepared for life in the ocean as they can. Great question. It ranges, the average lifespan of a shark is very different. A lot of species we have in the Bahamas, anywhere from about 25 to 40 years. Things like great whites, 50 to 70, and then that Greenland shark, 272 years. So there's quite a range of age differences of the lifespan of the shark. How many babies do they have? Depends on the type of shark. So a lemon shark, on average, anywhere from 8 to 10, or probably up to 15 babies born alive. Some others 30 to 40, or like that Port Jackson shark I mentioned, 1. So no matter what type of shark, it's not a huge number. And there are actually over 500 different species of sharks. So that's why it's so diverse as far as the methods of giving birth, the lifespan, the habitats they use, the places that they're found, their migration, their behaviors, their diet, all very different. So I did mention the diet, and a lot of times I think people think sharks eat everything. They actually have favorite foods like we do. So you think of a great white, like seals and sea lions. These animals have a lot of fat, blubber on them, which have a lot of calories. And if you're a shark and you're working really, really hard, you want something with calories to support the energy that you need. Especially a great white, they have to continuously swim to breathe. Other animals eat crabs, smaller little crustaceans. Nurse sharks will eat a conch, which is a big snail like we have in the Bahamas, lobster, fish, sea snakes, even other sharks. So their diet is, there's quite a diverse amount of kind of prey items that sharks will eat. What's my coolest shark experience? I've had a lot of them. I would say probably one of my favorites is watching a lemon shark give birth. I got to see one give birth to 10 babies. They come out, they have to break the umbilical cord off because there's no doctor to cut it. They spiral off and they're kind of like, ooh. And then all of a sudden it's like you flipped a switch, they become a shark. And they immediately start going to look for food and hiding out. So seeing the start of a life was absolutely incredible. Also being in the water with great hammerheads. Really, really beautiful animals. They're just majestic underwater. So just majestic underwater. Is there any other place on Earth other than freshwater we do not find sharks? Actually, there are 5 species of freshwater sharks. They're extremely rare, and in some cases only been one specimen of each type of species. And also bull sharks actually have the ability, they can osmoregulate in a way that allows them to go into fresh water. So believe it or not, bull sharks have been thousands of miles up the Mississippi River, rivers in Australia, so they can actually tolerate that. And are able to survive in there. So, but every ocean has sharks, all different levels of the ocean depths now. But it's another reason we really want to take care of our oceans, because we want to protect the diversity, the amount of life in these oceans, and sharks are a big part of that. So we want to keep protecting them so that this continues to be, that our oceans are full of sharks and continue to be healthy. See if anybody else. Sorry, I wasn't able to get the screen share to work. It just kept spinning and spinning and spinning. So apparently my computer didn't want to play today. I'm sorry, guys. But I will send a link that you can check out, because we do have some photos and videos. How do you become a marine biologist? Well, there's a lot of different things you can do, because there's a lot of different things you can study. But a great thing to start out is volunteering, getting internships, getting experience. And then when you go to university, you can study biology, you can study environmental science, you could take a specific marine biology course. So there's different routes that you can take, but the biggest thing is really gaining experience. There's a lot of tremendous volunteer programs around the world where you can go out on boats, you fish, you catch, you tag, you dive, learning how to scuba dive. Anyone can do that. You guys that are all in high school are old enough to learn. You don't have to learn in the ocean. You can do it in lakes or rivers or quarries, which a lot of places kind of in the internal U.S. Will do it in quarries or lakes. And it's an amazing tool. It's really fun, but it's also a great way for studying animals. So having a lot of experience is really, really important to be able to do that kind of work. So there's different routes you can take, but kind of really the biggest advice I would give for people interested is really doing internships and volunteering with programs, because that experience, that knowledge, those contacts are really, really valuable and make you a valuable asset because of your skill set when applying for a job, or looking to some internships you have to apply to get accepted to. So, you know, you're competing with other people to get that position. So having those skills is really, really beneficial. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I will. Yeah, if you can send, because we do have videos and talks and things, so you can see a bit more about the tagging and the photo and video that I was talking about. So yeah, that would be really great to be able to check that out. Again, I'm sorry, technology wasn't my friend today. I have time for a couple more questions, so if anybody does have a couple more they want to ask, either about sharks in general or working with them. seeing if I make sure I didn't miss any. All right, well, if you guys don't have any other questions, but if you do think of them, you can feel free to reach out and contact me. And the website is sharksforkids.com. So we have a lot of materials if you want to follow up and do some more work with your students or learn a little bit more about what we do. There's curriculum activities, videos, different ways to get involved and find out more about what's happening with sharks, some of the research being done. You can also check out our social media pages, Sharks for Kids, on Instagram, or Shark Education. We post a lot of what we're doing and fun things that are happening and going on. So definitely check that out for updates and information about what we're doing. And thank you guys all so much for wanting to chat a little bit about sharks today. Again, I'm sorry I wasn't able to share the photos and videos, but I am really glad that you guys did want to take some time to learn about these amazing animals. Oops, it looks like somebody's. Thank you guys so much. All right, thank you guys. Have a great day.